Jim, just to make sure that I think I understood you correctly, the millage figures that you gave us and the corresponding numbers as to whether or not we would still have a deficit or whether we may have some balance, took into account a projection of the savings from the bonds of $225,000. So that number is actually included in those numbers, correct?
Yes, it is.
All right. And in the documents that you have presented to us and with your explanation, the anywhere up to a $3 million increase still leaves us with a deficit. We do not have a balanced budget. With a $4 million increase, it leaves us with a fund balance of $163,258 moving forward. And finally, the 4.8277 mil increase would leave us with a little over $306,000 fund balance moving forward.
Yes, and I would strongly recommend that you take the position at this time of utilizing the 4.8277 mils that you are allowed, knowing full well that we can back off of that number when we need to pass a final budget.
Thank you, Jim, for your comments. I have made similar comments in prior budget meetings. I think the administration has worked diligently at trying to reduce expenditures as much as possible. I think that they've done everything they can to pursue additional sources of revenue. I think the cuts that have been proposed at this point will have a direct impact on our educational programs, and what we heard tonight, I think, will, in my opinion, have a greater impact on our educational programs. And it is my position at this point, knowing that that we're looking at a preliminary budget only, Jim, I would be in agreement with you. I'm speaking for myself, obviously, at the 4.8277 mil increase, with the full understanding that this is a preliminary budget and that the administration and the board would work diligently to reduce that millage impact for our taxpayers by the time that we get to a vote on the final budget in June. But those are my thoughts.
The total of the reductions in this budget, you said, were $2 million.
If you look at the very last page, you just put your packet over, you'll see that we laid out in 4 columns the proposed budget from January, the $28 million. In the middle there is where we stand now with this draft of $25.1 million. And then the second column from the right is the dollar change, which is $2,984,654. So that's nearly an 11% reduction from the January draft budget.
To refresh my memory, what was the budget in the current school year we're in?
We passed an expenditure budget of $26,257,261.
Thank you.
I think it was about this time last year when we were going through this, knowing that healthcare increases were going to happen, teachers' retirement from the PSERS was going to increase. At that time, I recommended that we do the 1.4 mil, and unfortunately, It did not pass, which meant that we went into this year with a very small general fund balance. The 4.8277 mils is a preliminary budget, as Mr. Mayor said, and I believe there are several things that are being developed that we don't have all the information on yet, that we could lower that millage. But I want to caution this group that they're already projecting next year that healthcare, I just read an article in today's paper, that healthcare next year will be going up about 8.5%, and the teachers' retirement responsibility of this district will also increase. So we have got to have some money in this budget, in the general fund, so that we can go into next year with some opportunity to say, well, maybe we don't have to increase the taxes. But the next 2 years are going to be very difficult for every school in Pennsylvania. Not just our school, but when you look at the local areas, the districts are all faced with this tremendous burden of trying to provide a good education for our kids. So my feeling is that we should, for a preliminary budget, go with a 4.8277 mil increase at this point, with the option that we will have in late June to reduce that if things come together as we would hope they would. So I put on the floor a motion, F3511, that the numbers that will be fit in there will reflect a 4.8277 mil increase.
Mr. Robinson. Mr. Robinson. Bruce. Bruce.
I'll second that.
There's a motion on the floor for F35-11 with the mill increase at 4.877, I think it is, 277. Discussion on the motion.
Mr. Robinson,
The board is,
we were handed this paper tonight. I signed up to...
Kevin, the board is discussing the budget.
I signed up
There's
to...
no, the public session is over.
I wasn't given this piece of paper to speak. This presentation was given after I'd already spoken. I'd like to have a couple questions on Mrs. Oldham's presentation before you vote.
There will be no questions from the floor at this time.
So if you don't...
There will be discussion now amongst the board members as to the motion, which is to approve the
Can I
budget.
go on record, we can have the information before the public speaking from now on, if she's going to hand something out. You can't ask questions if you don't have.
Kevin, I didn't know when it was handed out. Evidently, it was just handed out now when Mr. Marnell made his
That's
presentation.
right. How can the public speak on it? How can we speak on it if we don't get it?
I can't answer that.
You can't answer it, because you won't.
All right, discussion on the motion.
Let me start with a correction. I've been doing some more reviewing of the statutes on this matter. What we're passing here is simply a proposed budget, not the budget. The 5-vote requirement.
You use the microphone, Mr. Rafferty, please.
Can't hear you.
Yeah, under the Pennsylvania School Code, there are certain actions of the board that require a majority of the entire board, and others that simply require a majority of those who are in attendance at the meeting, provided there is a quorum. So it's the majority of the quorum versus the majority of the entire board. In looking at the section that requires a majority of the entire board, there is a distinction between the budget and the proposed budget. And the budget passage requires a majority of the entire board, but that is not the case for the passage of the proposed budget. You're not setting taxes and you're not adopting the budget at this point in time. You're simply adopting a proposed budget, which is distinguished in the statutes. So a majority of the quorum would be sufficient to pass the resolution. And I just wanted to make that clear.